United States illegally get pushed further and further and further back the line every single day with the thousands of illegal immigrants coming across the border.
Texas is facing a border crisis like never before. Migrant numbers have skyrocketed, overwhelming facilities and local authorities. The governor's urgent actions signal panic as the situation spirals out of control. Every hour brings new pressure and uncertainty, leaving residents and officials on edge. With the region struggling to cope, the consequences could be severe, and the questions this surge raises demand immediate answers. The crisis explodes. The situation along the Texas-Mexico border has reached critical mass. What was once manageable immigration flow has transformed into an overwhelming humanitarian and security crisis that has forced Governor Greg Abbott into a state of emergency response the likes of which Texas has never seen before.
Also weighing in on this ongoing migrant crisis in the southern border, Texas Governor Greg Abbott. Today, he was a special guest on ABC's This Week. The governor says with the expected end of Title 42, this could create chaos.
Governor Abbott's warning about chaos was not mere political rhetoric. It was a prophetic assessment of what would unfold across Texas communities. The data tells a staggering story. At the peak of the crisis, U.S. Border Patrol was encountering over 187,000 migrants monthly along the southwest border during the Biden administration. Border communities from El Paso to Brownsville found themselves completely overwhelmed, with local resources stretched beyond breaking points. The scope of this emergency prompted Abbott to launch Operation Lone Star, a multi-billion-dollar state initiative that represents the largest border security operation in Texas history. The operation has deployed Texas National Guard troops, Department of Public Safety personnel, Marine units, and physical barriers including razor wire along critical crossing points.
The governor was asked about those migrants who are coming to America because they're being persecuted.
And Martha, this is very important because there are people across the globe who have a valid asylum reason to come to the United States, that they can do so legally right now. The people who have the ability to come to the United States illegally get pushed further and further and further back the line every single day with the thousands of illegal immigrants coming across the border.
This statement underscores a critical frustration. The unprecedented surge of illegal crossings wasn't just straining resources, it was undermining the legitimate immigration system entirely. Those following legal pathways were being pushed aside while chaos reigned at the border. The numbers paint a devastating picture. Operation Lone Star has reported over 500,000 migrant apprehensions since its inception. Texas authorities have seized more than 733 million lethal doses of fentanyl. The state has spent over $11 billion on border security efforts, money that critics argue should have been federal responsibility. Governor Abbott's emergency response included unprecedented measures. In January 2024, Texas seized Shelby Park and Eagle Pass, installing razor wire fencing and temporarily blocking Border Patrol access. This move prompted cease and desist letters from the Department of Homeland Security and threats of DOJ referrals. It was a constitutional standoff that drew support from 25 Republican governors who recognized the federal government's failure to act. The human cost has been devastating. Communities along the border have witnessed dramatic changes in their daily lives. Local sheriffs report that their departments have been pulled away from regular law enforcement duties to handle border-related emergencies. The contrast between different administrations' approaches has been stark. During the Biden administration, these same communities were experiencing hundreds of crossings daily, overwhelming local infrastructure and resources.
Tell me what used to happen right here.
Well, yes, that casually they'd have like a little raft come across the river.
Escobar says sometimes there would be hundreds of people. Families traveling together would mostly surrender to Border Patrol and start the asylum-seeking process, while others, he said, would make a run for it.
The transformation was so dramatic that local mayors who had never engaged in partisan politics found themselves taking sides. The chaos wasn't theoretical, it was happening in their backyards, affecting their constituents, and straining every community resource available. Governor Abbott's response also included the controversial migrant busing program, which has transported over 120,000 migrants to sanctuary cities including New York, Chicago, Denver, and Washington, D.C. The program was designed to highlight the crisis and share the burden with cities whose policies Abbott argued encouraged illegal immigration.
Before anybody gets on a bus and goes anywhere, they go voluntarily. They self-identify what city they want to go to. So New York is purposefully chosen by the migrants as a location to go to, point one. But point two, the only place that they are typically going to are cities that self-identify as sanctuary cities, which may be one of the reasons why some of the migrants choose to go there.
The busing program drew lawsuits and political backlash, but it succeeded in nationalizing the border crisis. Suddenly, cities thousands of miles from the border were experiencing firsthand what Texas communities had been dealing with for years: a national security nightmare. Behind the overwhelming numbers of migrants lies a far more sinister force. Mexican drug cartels have effectively seized control of the entire smuggling operation along the border, transforming it into a multi-billion-dollar criminal enterprise that reaches into every corner of America.
The presence of Mexican cartels in the United States has changed how domestic criminal organizations function. It has created a negative impact that is becoming more pervasive day by day. Street gangs, motorcycle gangs, and other domestic criminal organizations have all been relegated to the status of mere contractors and subcontractors for the cartels. As such, they are beholden to act as they are commanded by their masters.
This testimony from a Texas sheriff before Congress reveals the shocking extent of cartel infiltration. American criminal organizations are no longer independent operators. They have been subjugated by Mexican cartels and now function as their workforce within the United States. The cartel's business model has evolved dramatically. What was once primarily drug trafficking has expanded to include human smuggling as an equally, if not more, profitable enterprise.
While illegal immigration has been a historical issue along the U.S.-Mexico border, this changed more than a decade ago when the cartels seized control of the border regions of Mexico and changed their business model to include smuggling of people.
No one crosses the border without cartel permission. Every migrant must pay what amounts to a cartel tax, typically ranging from $8,000 for Mexican nationals to $25,000 or more for migrants from other countries. Those who cannot pay up front are placed into what officials describe as indentured servitude.
The other aspect of this new business model is that cartels began using illegal aliens smuggled into the United States as part of their logistic workforce. When people are smuggled into the U.S., they must pay a fee to the cartels in order to gain safe passage. In our area, most illegal aliens are smuggled into Houston for transport across the eastern half of the United States. Once in Houston, they are given the final amount that they owe the cartels and their contractors for being here. From there, the illegal aliens end up in various forms of indentured servitude across our nation.
The implications are staggering. Millions of people now residing in the United States are effectively under cartel control, obligated to provide labor, transport drugs, smuggle additional people, or even engage in forced prostitution to pay off their debts. The cartels operate with a level of sophistication that rivals nation-states. They maintain detailed databases on everyone they smuggle, including family member information that they use as leverage. Failure to comply with cartel demands results in threats not just against the individual, but against their families back home. Evidence of this control has been documented in Texas counties far from the border. In Victoria County, approximately 180 miles from the border, the Gulf Cartel established control of the cocaine trade. They leased distribution rights to the Mexican mafia and enforced their monopoly with deadly consequences. At least 10 drug dealers who refused to comply simply disappeared. The scope of the crisis demands a complete rethinking of law enforcement strategy. This is no longer a border problem, it is a national emergency that affects every state in the Union. The cartel's reach extends from coast to coast, their influence embedded in communities across America through the millions of people who owe them debts. The Trump administration's designation of cartels as foreign terrorist organizations in 2025 has unlocked new tools for combating them, including sanctions, asset freezes, and potentially military-style operations. But dismantling their infrastructure within the United States will require unprecedented cooperation between federal, state, and local law enforcement. The numbers tell the story. A 550% increase in arrests in a single county located 180 miles from the border. This wasn't a border county dealing with crossings. This was cartel activity spreading deep into the Texas interior. The drug trafficking statistics are equally alarming. Fentanyl seizures have reached record levels, with loads measured in tons rather than pounds. A single seizure in Eagle Pass netted 3.5 tons of methamphetamine in a semi-truck, and officials acknowledge that for every load caught, many more slip through. Even as border crossings have declined under stricter enforcement, sheriffs warn that cartels will adapt. They will find new routes, new methods, and new vulnerabilities to exploit. The war against cartels is far from over. It's simply entering a new phase. Impact on neighboring states and communities. The Texas border crisis has created ripple effects that extend far beyond the Rio Grande, impacting neighboring states, reshaping local economies, and transforming communities across America.
A new report shows Texas is feeling the impact of immigration policy more than almost any other state. The Migration Policy Institute says about 2 million immigrants in Texas are living here without legal status, second only to California.
2 million undocumented immigrants in Texas alone, a population larger than many American cities. This massive population shift has strained every public system from healthcare to education to law enforcement.
And new data from the Federal Reserve Bank of Dallas shows those policies are hitting some businesses hard. Many say it's becoming tougher to hire and keep foreign-born workers, even as their dependence on them grows. About a quarter of Texas companies reported relying on workers from outside the U.S. this year, up from just 15% last year.
The economic impact cuts both ways. Businesses have become increasingly dependent on foreign-born labor, yet enforcement actions create uncertainty and workforce instability. This dependency has grown from 15% to 25% of Texas businesses in just 1 year, a dramatic shift that reveals how deeply integrated immigrant labor has become in the state's economy. Neighboring states have experienced their own forms of impact. Arizona's Tucson sector has seen a 210% increase in family unit encounters as enforcement tightened in Texas, pushing migrants to seek alternative routes. California faces similar pressures as desperate migrants redirect westward. For border communities, the change has been dramatic. Mayors and residents describe the difference as night and day, from chaos with hundreds of crossings daily to relative calm. But this improvement comes with its own challenges. The economic interdependence between Texas and Mexican border states runs deep. Trade between the two regions exceeds $343 billion annually in GDP impact, with projections to triple by 2050. The Port of Laredo alone processes over 8,000 trailers daily, making it the busiest cargo port on the U.S.-Mexico border. Strict enforcement measures risk disrupting this vital economic artery.
When a Texas driver gets pulled over, it typically ends in either a ticket or a warning, but soon it could end in an immigration check. Nearly 60% of Texas counties have signed up for a federal partnership that allows deputies to enforce immigration law.
The expansion of Immigration Enforcement Authority to local law enforcement has created new tensions. Nearly 60% of Texas counties have signed 287G agreements with ICE, fundamentally changing the nature of traffic stops and routine police encounters. Civil rights groups warn of racial profiling, while supporters argue it's necessary to address the cartel threat.
Over the last 39 months of the Biden administration, law enforcement officers reported an average of 187,000 encounters at the southwest border per month. Now, flash forward to the first 2 months of the second Trump administration, that number has been slashed by 94%, only averaging a little over 11,000 per month. Zavala County Sheriff says it's changing his operations.
Night and day, night and day.
The 94% reduction in border encounters represents one of the most dramatic shifts in border security in modern history. From 187,000 monthly encounters to just 11,000, the change has been seismic. Local sheriffs describe improved morale among Border Patrol agents who are finally able to do their jobs rather than being stuck processing asylum claims.
You actually see Border Patrol working the fields, out looking for people. Back then, you couldn't get a Border Patrol agent to help you because they were always in the processing center.
It's a shift Clint McDonald, the executive director of the Southwest Border Sheriff's Coalition, says is positive.
The morale has gone through the roof, and they're out there doing their job again, and they are actually the heroes right now for securing that border.
But new challenges emerge even as old ones subside. Counties that built detention facilities based on high volume now face uncertainty about their futures. Jail overcrowding in some areas has forced sheriffs to make difficult decisions about which offenders to prioritize. The human cost of the crisis extends beyond statistics. Communities remain deeply divided. Some residents celebrate the return to order, while others worry about the impact on long-term residents, mixed-status families, and the region's cultural identity. Border communities remain among the poorest in America, with median household incomes far below national averages. The promise of economic improvement through border security must be weighed against the reality of communities dependent on cross-border commerce and cultural ties that span generations. The debate continues about who bears responsibility for violence and crime. Longtime residents point out that immigration has always been part of their community fabric, and that violence isn't limited to any single nationality or group. Mexico has responded to U.S. pressure with its own deployments, 10,000 National Guard troops to the northern border, while rejecting proposals for U.S. military presence on Mexican soil. The delicate diplomatic balance continues, with both nations recognizing their interdependence while disagreeing on tactics. For now, the border is quieter than it has been in decades. Apprehensions are at 55-year lows. The surge has subsided, but the underlying issues remain unresolved. Millions of undocumented residents, cartel networks embedded throughout America, and a broken immigration system that Congress has failed to fix for decades. The crisis may have retreated from daily headlines, but its impacts will be felt for generations. Communities have been transformed, relationships between law enforcement and residents have changed, and the question of how America handles immigration remains as contentious as ever.
Mayor Eric Adams is once again calling out Texas Governor Greg Abbott for his busing of asylum seekers to New York City.
That's right. In a statement, Mr. Adams said Abbott is attacking cities run by black mayors. Fox 5's Lizette Nunez, she's live outside the Port Authority bus terminal with more on Mayor Adams' claims. Good morning, Lizette.
Good morning, Dan and Tashani. And strong remarks coming from Mayor Adams. Mayor Adams believes that Governor Abbott is targeting cities led by black mayors as he continues to bus migrants to these cities. This also comes as Title 42 is expected to expire in a matter of days.
Governor Greg Abbott's emergency response to the border crisis represents one of the most significant state-level interventions in federal policy in modern American history. Whether viewed as necessary action in the face of federal inaction or dangerous overreach of state authority, Operation Lone Star and related measures have fundamentally changed the border security landscape. The cartel threat remains real and present, a national security challenge that extends far beyond the border into every American community. The tens of millions of undocumented residents now in the country represent both a humanitarian concern and a potential cartel resource that law enforcement must address. The Texas border story is far from over. It's a story of cartels that have rewritten the rules of criminal enterprise in America, of sheriffs fighting battles they feel they've been losing, of a governor scrambling to respond with every tool at his disposal, and of communities caught in the crossfire of policies that affect their daily lives. For neighboring states and communities, the ripple effects continue. Economic ties, cultural connections, and enforcement policies all remain in flux. The only certainty is that the border crisis, in whatever form it takes, will continue to shape American politics, policy, and communities for years to come. As of December 2025, illegal crossings have dropped by 87% in Texas, according to state officials attributed to aligned state-federal strategies under Operation Lone Star and the declared national emergency. Border areas like El Paso have transformed from scenes of chaos to what one sheriff described as so quiet it's spooky, with shelters operating at minimal capacity. The legal battles continue. Texas Senate Bill 4, which criminalized unauthorized border crossing at the state level and empowered state judges to order deportations, was ruled unconstitutional by a federal appeals court in July 2025. The tension between state and federal authority over immigration remains unresolved, even as operational cooperation has improved. The question now is not whether to act, but how and whether America can find the political will to address the root causes of a crisis that has transformed the Texas border into a battlefield and spread its consequences across the nation. What do you think should be done to handle this unprecedented border surge? Share your thoughts in the comments below.